Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Eli. I'm the pastor here at Nickel City Church. Guys, I hope you had a great Thanksgiving weekend. I hope you got some time to rest and relax. I know for my family, we traveled to Pittsburgh to see my parents who still live there, and so we went there with the intentions of having a really relaxing and kind of just not doing anything type of trip. But as we got into the trip, we realized very quickly that there was a lot to do. So it was back-to-back activities while we were in Pittsburgh, and we came back feeling exhausted from our vacation. Anyone ever been there before? But we had a great time. We had a really fun time hanging out in Pittsburgh with my parents. And so we are excited, though, to be getting back into a little bit more routine in life. And so I'm excited to be back here, and I'm excited to continue our series, Oh, Thank God. This is our second week, and actually our last week as well. Through this series, we've been talking about what it looks like to live a truly thankful and grateful life. The first week, we talked about what it looked like to be thankful and what it looked like to live a truly thankful life. And we talked about three things. We said there was really three keys to living a thankful life. The first one was recognition, that we need to recognize that God and others have blessed us and have helped us in life. The second point was appreciation. The second key was appreciation, not just recognizing, but appreciating and valuing that what they have done in our lives has actually changed the course of our lives and helped us for the better. And then the last point for the key of thankfulness was vocalization. Letting them know, using your words and letting them know. And so today we're going to be moving into the category of gratefulness. And I think oftentimes we put thankfulness and gratefulness in the same category. I think that that's just an easy thing to do because they're pretty similar, but I think that it does benefit us if we begin to separate them a little bit. So what I want to do today is I want to take a look in the Bible at a woman named Hannah who lives a grateful life. And as we look at her life, we'll start to see the difference in some of the characteristics of what gratefulness is and how we can apply it to our lives. So let's jump right into it. Now, Hannah's story, it goes on for 3 chapters in the Bible in the book of 1 Samuel. So instead of reading the entire 3 chapters, I'm going to skip over a few things. So if you see kind of the ... that means that there was some stuff that was just minimized just for time's sake. But if you want to read the full story of Hannah, I would encourage you to look in the book of 1 Samuel. It's really easy to find because it's the first 3 chapters. So chapter 1, 2, and 3. So let's jump into this now. Book of 1 Samuel. In chapter 1, verse 2, it says this: Elkanah had 2 wives, Hannah and Nina. Nina had children, but Hannah did not. Each year, Elkanah would travel to Shiloh to worship and sacrifice to the Lord. On the days Elkanah presented his sacrifice, he would give portions of the meat to Nina and each of her children. And though he loved Hannah, he would give her only one choice portion because the Lord had given her no children. So Nina would taunt Hannah and make fun of her because the Lord had kept her from having children. Year after year, it was the same. Nina would taunt Hannah, and as they went to the tabernacle. Each time, Hannah would be reduced to tears and would not even eat. Now, I want to pause here and take a look at this for a little bit. So Hannah is married to Elkanah, who also has a second wife. They are married to him at the same time. So Hannah is married to Elkanah, and Nina is also married to Elkanah. Now, the Bible doesn't tell us this, but if you look in kind of the Jewish history books, and if you look at the Jewish manuscripts, we can see that Hannah was the first wife of Elkanah. So they got married. So with that in mind, I want you to picture this a little bit with me. Just start to imagine this. Hannah and Elkanah, they're getting married. They're probably young. They're probably excited. They're probably in love and really looking forward to getting married. The Bible tells us that Elkanah loves Hannah. And so they're young. They're getting married. They're getting ready to go into this adventure and this journey called marriage and start a life together. And Hannah's probably excited after they get married. She's probably doing the homemaker thing where she's staying at home and she's cooking soups and stews and probably waiting for Elkanah to get home. And she's excited to see him and just can't wait to count down the hours until he comes home. And when they are together, they're happy. They're in love. There a lot of good things are going for them. But then, as time goes on, life starts to weigh on them. And they're faced with the reality that Hannah isn't going to be having any children. Now, I know some people personally who have went through this, and I know it's an incredibly difficult thing when you want to have children, but you aren't able to. But even more so in these times, it affected them even so much more. It wasn't just the emotional strain of wanting kids and not having them, but your children were also your inheritance. They were your future. Your children were your security in life. So if you look at it this way, that if you owned a business, or if you maybe owned a trade shop, or you did something, what would happen is your children would actually work in the shop with you. They would work the family business. And as they got older, and as you got older as a parent and were getting closer to retirement, you would hand off the family business to your children. And in turn, the children would take care of their parents for the rest of their lives. So here we see Hannah faced with this dilemma, not just facing the predicament in her own life and the pain and the grief that she's feeling, but also probably society's, where she's probably hearing all of those comments. You know, you aren't getting any younger. When are you going to have kids? Isn't that what you guys are supposed to do? Aren't you a stay-at-home mom? How are you going to be a stay-at-home mom if you don't have any kids? So she's dealing with it in herself. She's dealing with it from society, but also from an economic standpoint. She's also faced with, well, what is our life going to look like as we get closer to our death and as we get closer to retirement age? We don't have anyone to hand off our business to. So in that, Elkanah decides to take on a second wife. And Elkanah doesn't make this choice to take on another wife because he doesn't love Hannah. He doesn't take on another wife because he feels like their relationship is lacking, but out of a choice that they need to start a family. And so Hannah's facing a lot. She's going through a lot of different things at this point. And then Elkanah marries Nina, who boasts to her, who puts her down for not being able to have kids. And so let's keep reading in the story. Hannah is distressed. She is brought to tears, and she's not eating at this point. And so Elkanah asks her, he says, "Why are you crying, Hannah?" Elkanah would ask, "Why aren't you eating? Why be downhearted just because you have no children? You have me. Isn't that better than having 10 sons? So Elkanah right here he's a good guy, right? We can kind of see it from here. He's telling her, hey, listen, don't worry, cheer up. Look, you still have me. You have my heart. I love you. I'm going to care for you. Just because we don't have any kids, it doesn't change anything in our relationship. And so Elkanah's trying to console her, but Hannah is still distressed. We'll continue in verse 9. It says, after a sacrificial meal at Shiloh, Hannah got up and went to pray. Eli, the priest, was sitting at his customary place beside the entrance of the tabernacle. Hannah was in deep anguish, crying bitterly as she prayed to the Lord. And she made this vow, "O Lord of heaven's armies, if you will look down upon my sorrow and answer my prayer and give me a son, then I will give him back to you. He will be yours for his entire lifetime." As she was praying to the Lord, Eli watched her. Seeing her lips moving but hearing no sound, he thought she had been drinking. "Must you come here drunk?" he demanded. "Throw away your wine." "Oh, no, sir," she replied. "I haven't been drinking wine or anything stronger, but I am very discouraged, and I was pouring out my heart to the Lord. Don't think that I'm a wicked woman, for I've been praying out of great anguish and sorrow." "In that case," Eli said, "go in peace. May the God of Israel grant the request that you have asked of him." "Oh, thank you, sir," she exclaimed. Then she went back and began to eat again, and she was no longer sad. So we see that Hannah gets a promise from God. Well, more so from the priest who spoke on behalf of God. She got a promise of her request being answered, and that was enough. The promise of God was enough to change her output. Changed how she was feeling, changed what she was looking at, and she is holding on to this promise. As we continue reading in verse 19, it says, "The entire family got up the next morning and went to worship the Lord once more. They returned home to Ramah. When Elkanah slept with Hannah, the Lord remembered her plea, and in due time she gave birth to a son. She named him Samuel, for she said, 'I asked the Lord for him.' The next year, Elkanah and his family went on their annual trip to offer sacrifice to the Lord and to keep his vow. But Hannah did not go. She told her husband, 'Wait until the boy is weaned. Then I will take him to the tabernacle and leave him there with the Lord permanently.'" Well, just a side note, I just want to pause here for a moment. So she's going to give Samuel to God. She's going to take him to the tabernacle and leave him there at the tabernacle. Side note, please don't do that with your children here, okay? All right. I know it happened in the story. I know Hannah did it and it was okay, but please don't leave your kids at the church permanently, okay? Listen, I know my name is Eli and the priest's name was Eli in there, but please do not leave your children here permanently, all right? If you do, here's my promise to you. If you leave your kids here permanently or forget them at church, I promise you that I will give them cheese balls and animal crackers and all the candy that they can eat, and then I will send them back to you. So you don't want to leave your kids here permanently, all right? Just that side note. But this is what Hannah does, and it's acceptable in this time that she's giving him literally over to God. Let's keep reading. Verse 24, it says, "When the child was weaned, Hannah took him to the tabernacle. They brought the boy to Eli. 'Sir, do you remember me?' Hannah asked. 'I am the very woman who stood here several years ago, praying to the Lord. I asked the Lord to give me this boy, and he granted my request. Now I'm giving him to the Lord, and he will belong to the Lord his whole life.' And they worshiped the Lord there." Man, I love this story of Hannah. Hannah is desperate. She has no other options in life. She has no other way to get a son, but she cries out desperately to God. If you remember last week, we talked about 10 men who were desperate for a miracle in their lives. We talked about 10 men who had leprosy, who had no other place to go. No doctor could cure them, but they were desperate, and so they called out to God. And Hannah's in the same place. Let me tell you this today. If you are desperate today, if you are in desperate need of something in your life, if you feel like there's a circumstance or a situation that you can't do anything about and you are feeling hopeless, let me encourage you that that is not the end, and that's actually not a bad place to be. Because here we see when people are desperate and they're crying out to God, that God shows up in a real way to answer their prayers. So here we see Hannah desperate. She's crying into the church, in the tabernacle, literally crying where the priest thinks that she's drunk. And she's just crying out to God, pouring out her heart to him. And God answers her requests. He gives her a son. I think that we can learn a lot from this story of Hannah. I think there's a lot of different things that we can pull out, but specifically today, I wanted to look at the idea of gratefulness in Hannah's life, because I think she teaches us the difference between thankfulness and gratefulness. There's two key characteristics of gratefulness, and I think Hannah displays them both beautifully. So as we jump into this, we'll take a look at the first characteristic. And the first is this, is that gratefulness continues on. Gratefulness continues on. See, if we compare thankfulness and gratefulness, this is one of the major characteristic differences that we see, is that gratefulness continues on. It's not just a momentary feeling or a momentary thing. Gratefulness continues. See, thankfulness is good. God tells us that we should be thankful in life. But thankfulness is just the minimum. Thankfulness is just the start. Gratefulness is what we should strive for, because gratefulness continues on. It's not just a moment, but it's a continual recognition. Hannah didn't just feel thankful the moment that Eli told her that her prayers would be answered. Hannah didn't just feel thankful in the moment that she found out that she was pregnant. She didn't just feel thankful just for a moment after she gave birth. She didn't even just feel thankful just in the moment that she gives her son over. But she displays gratefulness all the way through the process, a continued recognition of God working in her life. And in fact, it doesn't even stop at the temple, because her story continues into chapter 3. And we see a song that she writes and she sings it to God. And it's talking about how good God is and how he's worthy of praise because the miracle she asked him for came true. The whole chapter is dedicated to her song about God. And the thing about songs is they tend to stick with us. So I can just picture and imagine Hannah singing this song for the rest of her life. Just singing this song of gratefulness to God for the things that he's done in her life. Gratefulness continues on. It doesn't stop the moment that we stop being excited about the promise. It continues on. And so what does that look like in a practical way in our lives? What does it look like to be grateful, to continue gratefulness in our lives? Well, I think a really practical way is, I think about when someone gives you a gift. Right? When someone gives you a gift, the minimum is thankfulness. We should say thank you when someone gives you a gift. Or maybe when someone helps you with a project, if you're moving or you're painting your basement and someone comes over, you should thank them for their help. But that's the minimum. That's the least we should do. That's the base level. But gratefulness looks a little bit different. Gratefulness means that if someone gives you a gift, you say thank you when they give it to you, but maybe next time that you use that gift, you send them a text, you send them an email, hey, I just want to let you know that I love that gift and I'm using it currently. Maybe it looks like a year later or 2 years later, my mom has presents from 10, 15 years ago that she still uses, our favorite cooking ware and her favorite pots and pans. And this idea that we still value and love the gifts will let someone know. Let those feelings not just be a momentary feeling of thankfulness, but let it be true gratefulness and let it continue in your life. You know, if someone helps you with a project or helps you move, not just thanking them in the moment, but maybe invite them over. Maybe say, hey, listen, I so appreciate you helping me move, and, you know, as soon as stuff gets settled here, I want to have you back over just to let you know that I appreciate it, that I thank you. I want to do a second pizza party. I want you to come back over, and we're going to eat pizza again, and we're going to celebrate this basement that is all finished now. See, gratefulness continues on. It doesn't fade away like thankfulness does. Our gratitude should be beyond just a moment. Gratefulness should continue on. And it's the same in our relationship with God. That is, we pray and ask God for things in our lives. We shouldn't just be thankful the moment that they happen, but we should write them down in our journal of life. We should write songs about them in our personal lives, remembering the good things that God has done for us. Not just singing worship just when we're together and whenever we come together on a Sunday, but having a heart of worship throughout the week. Because gratefulness continues on. It's not just a momentary feeling, but it continues. The second key characteristic that we see of gratefulness, and I think Hannah does this one as well, is that gratefulness requires action. Gratefulness requires action. You know, in the New Testament, there's two words that are used for thanks or thankfulness. And if you look at their definitions, if you just look at them at a base level, they look like pretty similar definitions. But there is one major characteristic difference in the two words. One is a noun, and one is a verb. See, one is a thing. It is something. You give thanks. It's a normal thing that we do of giving thanks. But the other one is an action. It is thanks. It requires action in our lives. And so as we look at gratefulness, gratefulness requires action in our lives in the same way. And we look at Hannah's life. And Hannah, all throughout this story and all throughout the whole 3 chapters, she does something in recognition of what God has given her. She does things. Her actions show that she is grateful. It's more than just saying, thank you, God, that I have a son. But she does something. She physically takes him and leaves him at the church, at the altar. She says, God, I'm so grateful. I'm going to write a song and remember who you are all throughout the rest of my life. She displayed gratefulness through what she did, through her actions. And it should be the same in our lives. You know, when people do things for us in life, practically, we should thank them with our words, but we should look for ways that we can display gratefulness. Maybe it's not just using our words, but actually writing a card, putting it in the mail and putting a stamp on it and mailing it out, doing something. Maybe it's baking someone cookies when they help you and you send them back with a tray of cookies and say, hey man, I just want to let you know that I appreciate you and so I did something for you. Maybe it means looking for ways to bless them or to give back to them in different opportunities. When we have a heart of gratitude, it requires us to do something with it, not just to stay in our own heart. I look at the life of Hannah, and I love the fact that she recognized that her gift came from God. She recognized what God had given her, and so she took action, and she gave her most valuable possession back to him. She gave him over to God. Think, this is the son she had been wanting, praying for, hoping for a long time, for many years, and she gives him back over to God. She recognizes that the gifts, the good and perfect gifts, come from God. So she turns around and gives them back. She does something. I think it's the same way with our lives. I think that we should do the same things. Maybe when we think about our time. Our time is valuable. It is. We're busy. People are busy doing all different things. I know you guys are coming up in the holiday season. There's a lot of things you want to do. But as we begin to recognize that our time comes from God, that God has blessed us with the lives that we have. God has given us this breath that we have and has put us on this earth for a time and a season. As we start to recognize that our time comes from God, it makes it easier for us to turn around and give it back to him. Say, God, my time is valuable, but I recognize that it comes from you, so I'm giving it back to you. I want to use it the way that you want me to use my time. Or what about this one, our finances? I know finances in church are always a thing that we kind of try to stay away from because the church has a bad reputation for just wanting money. But the truth of the matter is this, is that God is our provider. That God gives us everything that we need for godliness and life. And as he provides for us, we should have this same heart of gratitude that Hannah had. Saying, God, I recognize that my finances are valuable. I recognize that there's not a lot of them, but you know what? I want to turn around and I want to give that back to you. I want to manage my money the way that you tell me to manage my money. God, I want to tithe. Listen, I know we don't talk about it too often, but here's the thing is we should be giving not out of obligation to a church, not out of obligation to a person, but we should be giving out of a grateful heart. Out of recognition that everything that we have comes from God, therefore we're giving him back a portion of it. Well, what about this one? Our kids. You can kind of hear my kid in there right now. I just want to pause. Our kids are having a great time in there. They're learning about Jesus at their age level. That's an incredible thing. There's discussion questions with the older kids that they're talking about these ideas in the Bible. They're talking about who God is and who God is in their lives. So if you have kids, I'd encourage you. I know sometimes maybe you want to skip church, but get your kids here somehow. Figure it out because they're learning, they're growing. They're having a great time, as you can hear. But I think about this idea with my kids. We have 3 kids. And I think about this idea that these are my most prized possessions. These kids, I love them. I'd die for them. I'd do anything for my kids. But as I recognize that the Bible says that children are a gift from God, it makes me wrestle with the thought that maybe they aren't my kids. Maybe God has blessed me to take care of these kids, and I'm going to do the best job that I can. I'm going to do the very best that I can to raise them, to be a good father to them. But the reality is I can't be the best father to them. But God can. God can give them everything that they need. And you know what? It actually takes the pressure off to live with a grateful life. When you live with gratitude in your heart and you give back to God and you surrender things, it actually takes the pressure off of my life a lot. See, whenever I look at my kids and they don't have snow boots for the winter, I look and I say, well, I'm going to do what I can do to try to get them. But God, they're your kids. I need you to provide. And you know what? He does. And not just the boots, but the coats. And they come in the door, or you find them at the thrift store. And you know, every need that they have in life is being met, not because I'm a perfect parent, but because God is the perfect parent. And so as they're getting older, I believe this same principle. You know, I don't make a lot of money as a pastor, and so I look at them growing up and going to college, and I can't help them pay for it. But when that time comes, I'm going to look to God and say, God, you're going to take care of your kids. I trust that you're going to be their provider, that you're going to be the best father that I can't be, that you're going to take care of them because you take care of what is yours. And so this idea of gratefulness and surrender, it actually takes the pressure off of our lives if we truly are surrendered to God. But the idea is that it requires action in our lives. It's more than just a feeling. It's more than just a feeling of being happy or feeling thankful, but it should propel us into action of some sort. Take a look at this verse in the Bible in Romans chapter 12. It says this, "Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship." It says, look, I urge you out of recognition, out of a view of God's mercy, of understanding where this mercy comes from, I urge you to do something with it. To show your gratefulness. Don't just say it, but display it by offering yourself as a sacrifice to God. By saying, God, my life is yours. God, my time is yours. My finances are yours. My family is yours. I trust you. And I give over my life as a living sacrifice because I'm truly grateful for what you have given me. As we get ready to close, I'm going to ask our teams to come up. I want to look at one more story in the Bible. And this story is of Jesus. When Jesus was here on earth, and he's having his last meal with his disciples. He's having the last meal where he knows that he's going to die. He knows that the time is coming soon. In fact, Jesus came to earth to die. That was his purpose because the Bible says that the punishment of sin is death. So Jesus came down to take our punishment. Even though Jesus never sinned, he never did wrong, Jesus took our punishment. That was his purpose. And so he comes down and he's having this last meal with his disciples. This last moment. And he knows what's going to happen. He knows he's going to die soon. But he leaves them with some instructions. And he leaves them in a heart of gratefulness to be set up for success, to be grateful for the future. Take a look at this in the book of Luke. It says this, "And he took the bread, and he gave thanks, and he broke it. And he gave it to them, saying, 'This is my body given for you. Do this in remembrance of me.'" In the same way, after supper, he took the cup, saying, "This is the cup of the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you." We see this line here, "Do this in remembrance of me." And maybe you've seen that somewhere on a plaque, or you've seen that somewhere in a store. But the idea is that God has set us up to have a heart of gratitude. He wants us to remember and to do something. He wants us to physically take part in this communion, to physically take this so that we can remember and live a life of gratitude towards Him. Gratefulness requires action, and it continues on beyond just a moment. So maybe you've accepted Jesus in your life and you believe in Him, and that's been it, and you just don't live in a heart of gratitude. But Jesus says, I want you to remember. Do this and remember. Because the reality is Jesus gave so much for us. He sacrificed Himself. His body was beaten. He was spit on. His blood was poured out. They whipped Him. They nailed nails through His hands and His feet. And they left Him there to die. And He did die for us, for our punishment. So in recognition of this, we're going to do something today. We're going to take communion. We're going to take bread and juice, and it's going to be a reminder for us of the things that Jesus did for us. But I want it to be more than just a moment here. I want it to be a lifestyle. I want it to be a lifestyle of remembering what Jesus has given us. I want it to be a lifestyle of doing out of love for God. Not out of obligation, but out of gratefulness towards Him. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to sing one more song. And during the song, we're going to pass out the communion elements, just bread in the cup and some juice. And if you believe in Jesus, and you believe that Jesus took your place and took your punishment, you're welcome. Take part in communion. I would encourage you to do that. If you're sitting here today and you're saying, well, I still don't know, I don't know what I believe and I'm not sure, that's okay. I would encourage you just to let it pass you for this time. This is something we do as a remembrance of what we believe in. So if you don't believe it yet, that's okay. You don't have to take it. No one's going to look at you or be mad at you for not taking it. But as we sing this song, I would ask that you take these elements, take the cup and take the bread, and just hold on to it for a moment as we sing this. Just hold on to it and begin to remember. Begin to think and thank God in your mind, in your heart. But I'd encourage you also to take action. More than just taking a piece of bread, let's take action in our lives because of the sacrifice that God has made for us. In view of God's great mercy, let's offer our lives as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. So we're going to sing here in a moment. The elements will be passed, and just hold on to them, and I'll come back up and we'll pray together and take them all together.
Jealous for me. He loves like a hurricane. I am a tree. I'm bending beneath the weight of His wind and mercy. jealous for me. He loves like a hurricane. I am a tree. I'm bending beneath the weight of his wind and mercy. And all of a sudden, and I am unaware of these reflections eclipsed by glory. I realize just how beautiful you are and how great your affections are for me. And oh, and how he loves us so. And oh, how he loves us. How he loves us so.
Just take another moment just to remember, just to reflect. To live a heart of thankfulness and of gratefulness. God, instill this in us now. We don't want this just to be a moment that passes. Change our hearts, God, shift the direction that we're going. We love you, God, we need you. Let's take the bread and I'm just going to pray here for a moment. God, we are grateful, Lord. God, for the things that you have given us. God, because of the sacrifice that you physically made. God, you did something out of love for us. God, you gave up your body. You were beaten, you were whipped, you were bruised, you were rejected. You were humiliated. God, and you went through it willingly out of your love for us. And we're grateful for that, God. Let this be a reminder of the sacrifice that you made, God. And I pray that you would help us in return out of love and out of appreciation and out of grateful heart, God, that we would give our lives to you. God, we're thank you for your body that was broken for us. If you haven't yet, you can take the bread. In the same way, we'll take the juice, and the juice represents Jesus' blood. You know, that's where life is in. It's in the blood. He gave up all of it for us. So let's just pray. God, we are grateful, Lord, that you gave your son Jesus, and that he was beaten and wounded, and that he bled real blood for us. God, I pray that this juice would serve as a symbol and a reminder of the sacrifice that he's done for us. God, let this juice be more than just a part of communion, God, but let us know that there's life and there's power through Jesus' name. God, let us know what's available to us, the promises that are available to us because of what Jesus did. God, help us to be grateful and to do something with it. God, I pray you help us to live a life of power in the spiritual realm. God, let us live a life that's not just what we want to do, but let it be surrendered to you. God, let us be guided by the Holy Spirit. God, let us have the power and the authority that you've given us. God, let us do something with this gift that you've given us. God, we need you consistently. Don't let us ever be content with where we are or who we are, God, but let us always be looking for who you want us to be. God, we need you, and we're grateful that you started and paved the way through the blood of Jesus. God, we love you and we thank you. You can take the cup if you haven't already. Guys, my plea to you would be this, is don't let this or the heart of gratefulness fade. I know Thanksgiving is over. I know that we don't typically stop to give thanks in a formal way, but let me encourage you, please live like this. Have a heart of thankfulness and appreciation and recognition and vocalizing it to others, but also be grateful. Let that appreciation continue on in your life and do something with it. Tell your friends, tell your family that you love them, that you care about them. Thank them, but then do something out of appreciation. And the same with our lives with God. Don't let this just be a moment that passes by, but let this be the start of a grateful life. And as we love you, I'm so glad you're here. I'd encourage you to fill out some more questions. We had some great questions for that you asked for. Go ahead and go do that. Fill them out because we want to be able to answer those Wednesday. I also want to invite you out. Wednesday is going to be a great time. We had some good discussion, some good talks. So love you guys. Glad you were there. And we will see you on Wednesday.